The medical ship Asclepius floated alone in the dark space between stars. Red warning lights flashed across its white hull like angry eyes in the darkness. Inside the ship, death walked through every corridor and every room. The crew of 37 beings from 12 different worlds lay dying from a disease they called the Crimson Flux. Dr. Kevin Shaw moved quietly through the medical bay, checking on his patients one by one. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor as he walked from bed to bed. The human doctor had not slept in 3 days, but his hands stayed steady as he worked. Dark circles ringed his eyes, and his medical uniform was wrinkled and stained. But he kept moving. Captain Zara Vex lay on the main medical table. Her skin, which should have been bright blue like crystal, had turned gray and dull. The proud Altarian captain, who once commanded respect from every species in the galaxy, now could barely lift her head. The disease ate away at her nervous system, sending waves of pain through her body every few minutes. Kevin placed a cool cloth on her forehead and checked the machines that monitored her heart. The numbers on the screen showed what he already knew. She was getting worse. The Crimson Flux had killed every other crew member except for Kevin and Captain Vex. The disease seemed to pass right through humans without making them sick, but it destroyed every other known species. 3 tables away, the body of Commander Rex lay covered with a white sheet. The Zentari engineer had died that morning, his 4 hearts finally stopping after fighting the disease for 6 days. Kevin had performed the proper burial rituals according to Zentari custom, burning special herbs and saying the ancient words in their clicking language. The ship's computer spoke in its calm voice, reporting another distress call sent into space. No one would answer. Kevin had tried to contact other ships for help, but as soon as they learned about the Crimson Flux, they changed course and flew away as fast as they could. The disease scared everyone in the galaxy. Kevin walked to the small kitchen area and made some hot tea. His hands shook slightly as he poured the water. He was tired beyond belief, but he could not stop. Captain Vex needed him, and he had promised to help her. He had made an oath as a doctor to care for the sick, no matter what species they were. Or how dangerous it might be, he returned to Captain Vex with the tea. She tried to smile at him, but the pain made it difficult. "Kevin," she whispered, her voice weak and rough, "you should leave me and save yourself." Kevin shook his head and helped her sit up to drink the tea. "I'm not going anywhere, Captain. We'll figure this out together." Captain Vex had commanded respect from beings across the galaxy for 20 years. She had fought in 3 wars and saved countless lives. Now she depended on one human doctor who refused to abandon her. In her culture, such loyalty was rare and precious. The ship's alarms began to sound again. Kevin walked to the control panel and saw what the computer had detected. 3 Federation patrol ships were heading their way, but they were not coming to help. The bright red symbols on the screen meant they were carrying weapons designed to destroy the Asclepius completely. Kevin knew what this meant. The Federation had decided that the ship and everyone on it was too dangerous to live. They would blast the Asclepius into tiny pieces to make sure the Crimson Flux could never spread to other worlds. It was the smart choice for protecting billions of lives across the galaxy. He walked back to Captain Vex and sat down beside her bed. "Captain, I need to tell you something. Federation ships are coming, and they're not here to rescue us." Captain Vex closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, Kevin saw acceptance there, not fear. "How long do we have?" Kevin checked the ship's sensors. "Maybe 6 hours before they get here." "Then you must take an escape pod and leave now," Captain Vex said, trying to push herself up on the bed. "You can survive this disease." "You don't have to die with me." Kevin stood up and adjusted her blanket. He checked her medicine and made sure she was comfortable. "Captain, I became a doctor to help people when they're hurt and scared. I didn't become a doctor to run away when things get dangerous." Captain Vex looked at him with wonder in her fading eyes. In all her years commanding different species, she had never seen such devotion. Most beings would save themselves when faced with certain death. But this human doctor stayed by her side. Even though he could escape safely outside the ship, space remained dark and empty. No rescue would come, no miracle would save them. But inside the medical bay, Kevin continued to care for his patient, refusing to let her face death alone. The last human and the last Altarian waited together as enemy ships approached, their friendship crossing the vast differences between their species. News of the Asclepius spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every news station and communication network carried the same frightening message: a deadly disease was loose in space, and it killed every species except humans. The Galactic Federation moved quickly to protect their worlds. Admiral Marcus Cole sat in his command chair aboard the Federation battleship Enterprise, reading the orders that had just arrived. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the metal arms of his chair tightly. The orders were clear and simple: find the medical ship, Asclepius, and destroy it completely. Marcus had known Kevin Shaw for 5 years. The young doctor had served on Marcus's ships before, saving lives and healing wounded soldiers. Kevin was one of the best medics in the human fleet, always putting his patients first. Now Marcus had to kill him to protect the galaxy. "Sir, we have the Asclepius on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Nancy Blake from her station. "They're still sending distress calls," Marcus nodded slowly. "Any other ships in the area?" 3 civilian transports detected them an hour ago, but they all changed course and left quickly when they learned about the disease. On the main screen, Marcus could see the small medical ship floating alone in space. It looked so peaceful and harmless, but it carried death inside its hull. The crimson flux had never been seen before, and no one knew how to stop it. The only safe choice was to destroy any ship that carried the disease. Meanwhile, on the Asclepius, Kevin received a message from the approaching Federation fleet. Admiral Marcus Cole's face appeared on the small screen in the medical bay. Kevin had served under Marcus before and respected him greatly. "Dr. Shaw, this is Admiral Cole. I'm sorry, but I have orders to destroy your ship. The crimson flux cannot be allowed to reach populated systems. You have 6 hours to say goodbye." Kevin looked at the screen for a long moment before answering. "Admiral, Captain Vex is still alive, and I think I might be able to help her. I need more time to work on a cure." Marcus shook his head sadly. "Kevin, I know you want to save her, but the risk is too great. Take an escape pod and get away from that ship. We'll pick you up safely." "I can't do that, sir. She's my patient, and I won't abandon her." The screen went dark, and Kevin knew he had disappointed his old commander, but he had made his choice. He would stay with Captain Vex until the end. Kevin tried to contact other ships for help, but no one would listen. The merchant vessel Golden Star received his message but immediately turned away when Kevin mentioned the crimson flux. The passenger liner Star Dancer did the same thing. Even the medical research ship Healing Hand, which was famous for helping anyone in need, refused to answer Kevin's calls. Dr. Linda Hayes sat in her office at the Human Medical Academy, watching the news reports about the Asclepius. She had taught Kevin Shaw everything he knew about medicine. He had been her best student, always asking questions and always trying to help others. Now he was going to die because he refused to abandon his patient. Linda tried to call Kevin directly, but the Federation had blocked all communications to the infected ship. She wanted to tell him to save himself, but she also knew why he was staying. Kevin believed that every life was worth saving. No matter the cost, the Galactic Medical Council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to talk about the crimson flux. Dr. Korath from Vulcan spoke for many when he said, "We cannot risk the lives of billions to save 2 people. The ship must be destroyed." Dr. Elizabeth Grant from Earth tried to argue for Kevin's life. "Dr. Shaw is one of our finest medical officers. If anyone can find a cure for this disease, it's him. We should give him more time." But the other council members disagreed. They had seen diseases destroy entire worlds before. The crimson flux was too dangerous to risk. The vote was 37-3. The Asclepius must be destroyed. Back on the medical ship, Kevin sat beside Captain Vex's bed and told her about the Federation's decision. She listened quietly, her breathing slow and difficult. The disease was winning its fight against her body. "Kevin," she whispered, In my culture, we believe that true friendship is shown in the darkest moments. You have shown me friendship beyond anything I have ever known." Kevin smiled and squeezed her hand gently. "We're not dead yet, Captain. I'm going to keep trying to help you." Captain Vex closed her eyes and tried to rest. The pain medicine Kevin had given her helped a little, but she could feel her strength leaving her body. She had commanded fleets and fought wars, but she had never faced an enemy like this disease. Kevin worked at his computer, reading everything he could about the Crimson Flux. The ship's medical database had information from across the galaxy, but nothing helped. Every species that caught the disease died within a week. Only humans seemed immune. As the hours passed, more Federation ships arrived. Kevin could see them on his sensors, forming a circle around the Asclepius like hunters surrounding their prey. They kept their distance, afraid of catching the disease, but their weapons were pointed at his ship. The galaxy had made its choice. The medical ship and everyone on it would die to keep the disease from spreading. Kevin understood their reasoning, but he could not accept it. He had one patient left to care for, and he would not abandon her, even if the entire galaxy turned against them. Kevin stood alone in the ship's laboratory, surrounded by machines that hummed and beeped in the quiet space. He had been working for 18 hours straight, studying blood samples and running tests. His eyes burned from staring at computer screens, but he kept pushing forward. Captain Vex was dying, and he was running out of time. The laboratory was the most advanced medical facility on the ship. Machines lined the walls, each one designed to analyze different aspects of disease and biology. Kevin had used every tool available, testing his own blood against Captain Vex's, looking for answers that might save her life. What he found amazed him. Human blood contained special proteins that fought against the Crimson Flux. These proteins, called antibodies, attacked the disease and destroyed it before it could hurt the body. That was why humans could carry the disease without getting sick, but there was a problem. The antibodies only worked inside human bodies. When Kevin tried to remove them and put them in a test tube, they broke apart and became useless within minutes. He could not simply give Captain Vex human blood and expect it to cure her. Kevin sat down and rubbed his tired eyes. Outside the laboratory, he could hear the ship's computer announcing that the Federation fleet was getting closer. He had maybe 4 hours before they opened fire. 4 hours to solve a problem that had killed 35 of his crewmates. He looked at the test results again, studying the way human antibodies worked. The proteins were connected to human genetic code, the basic instructions that made human. Bod is different from other species. If he could somehow change Captain Vex's genetic code to be more like a human's, her body might start making its own antibodies. The idea was dangerous and had never been tried before. Changing genetic code between different species was like trying to mix oil and water. Most doctors believed it was impossible. Even if it worked, the process might kill Captain Vex faster than the disease would. Kevin walked back to the medical bay where Captain Vex lay unconscious. Her breathing was shallow and weak. The machines monitoring her body showed that her organs were failing one by one. She had hours left, maybe less. "Captain," Kevin said softly, touching her shoulder, "I need to talk to you." Captain Vex opened her eyes slowly. Speaking was difficult for her now, but she managed to whisper, "What is it, Kevin?" "I think I found a way to help you, but it's very dangerous. I would need to change part of your genetic code to make it more like human genetic code. Your body might start fighting the disease on its own." Captain Vex listened carefully, even though the pain made it hard to think clearly. "What are the risks?" Kevin took a deep breath. "The process might kill you immediately. Your body might reject the changes and shut down. Even if it works, we don't know what other effects it might have on you. And if we do nothing, you'll die within the next few hours." Captain Vex was quiet for a long moment. She had faced death many times as a soldier and a ship captain, but never like this. The disease was invisible and unstoppable, eating away at her body from the inside. "Kevin," she said finally, "you have shown me more loyalty than anyone in my entire life. If you think this might work, then I trust you completely." Kevin felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. In a few hours, the Federation fleet would destroy the ship. He had one chance to save Captain Vex, and if he failed, they would both die knowing he had tried. Everything possible, he spent the next 2 hours preparing for the procedure. The ship's medical equipment was designed for this kind of work, but Kevin had to modify several machines to handle the genetic changes between human and Altarian biology. He checked and double-checked every calculation, knowing that one mistake would kill his patient. The genetic modification required him to inject special compounds into Captain Vex's bloodstream. These compounds would carry human genetic instructions to her cells, telling them to start making antibodies against the Crimson Flux. The process would take several hours to complete, and Captain Vex would need to stay perfectly still during that time. Kevin prepared the injection and loaded it into a medical device designed for genetic therapy. His hands shook slightly as he worked, not from fear but from exhaustion. He had not eaten or slept properly in days, but his mind remained focused on saving his patient. "Are you ready, Captain?" he asked, moving the device into position over her arm. Captain Vex nodded weakly. "Do it." Kevin activated the device, and the genetic compounds began flowing into Captain Vex's bloodstream. The machines around her bed immediately started showing changes as her body reacted to the foreign genetic material. Her heart rate increased, and her brain activity spiked as her cells began the complex process of genetic modification. For the first hour, nothing visible happened. Kevin monitored every aspect of Captain Vex's condition, watching for signs that her body was accepting or rejecting the changes. The machines beeped steadily, showing that she was alive but fighting a battle inside her cells. During the second hour, Captain Vex's skin began to change. The gray color caused by the disease started to fade in small patches, replaced by her natural blue crystal color. Kevin felt hope rising in his chest as he watched the improvement, but then alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Federation fleet had arrived at weapons range and was preparing to fire. Kevin looked at the communication panel and saw Admiral Marcus Cole's face on the screen. "Dr. Shaw, this is your final warning. You have 30 minutes to evacuate before we destroy your ship." Kevin looked at Captain Vex, who was still unconscious as her body underwent the genetic changes. Moving her now could disrupt the process and kill her. He had to make a choice: abandon his patient and save himself, or stay and fight for more time. Kevin stared at the communication screen where Admiral Marcus Cole waited for his answer. Behind the Admiral, Kevin could see the bridge of the Federation battleship, filled with officers preparing to destroy the Asclepius. The countdown timer showed 28 minutes remaining. "Admiral Cole," Kevin said, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. "Captain Vex is responding to treatment. I need more time to complete the procedure. If you destroy us now, you'll also destroy the first successful cure for the Crimson Flux." Admiral Cole shook his head sadly. "Kevin, I want to believe you, but I have my orders. The safety of the galaxy comes before 2 lives, even yours and the captain's." General Corax appeared on the screen beside Admiral Cole. The tall Centauran officer had cold, dark eyes and showed no emotion. "Dr. Shaw, your claims are desperate lies. No cure exists for the Crimson Flux. Prepare to be destroyed." Kevin felt anger rising in his chest. These people were ready to kill him and Captain Vex without even looking at his research. They had made up their minds before giving him a chance to prove his cure worked. "General Corax, I'm sending you my research data right now. Look at the test results. See how human antibodies fight the disease. Give me just 6 more hours to complete the treatment." General Corax glanced at the data that appeared on his screen, then dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Computer simulations and theories mean nothing. The ship will be destroyed in 25 minutes. Kevin ended the communication and walked quickly to the ship's control center. The Asclepius was a medical vessel, not a warship, but it had basic defensive systems for protection during dangerous missions. Kevin had never used weapons before in his life, but he was desperate. He activated the ship's shields and powered up the small defensive guns. The weapons were old and weak compared to what the Federation fleet carried, but they might buy him the time he needed. His hands moved across the control panels, following the instructions displayed on the computer screen. The Federation fleet detected the Asclepius powering its weapons and immediately went to battle stations. Admiral Cole could not believe what he was seeing. No medical ship had ever fired on Federation vessels. Kevin Shaw, a doctor sworn to save lives, was preparing to fight an entire fleet. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Nancy Blake, "the medical ship is targeting our lead destroyer." Admiral Cole opened communications again. "Kevin, what are you doing? Stand down your weapons immediately." Kevin's face appeared on the screen, and Admiral Cole was shocked by what he saw. The young doctor looked exhausted and desperate, but his eyes burned with determination. "Admiral, I will not abandon my patient. If you want to destroy us, you'll have to fight us first." General Corax laughed coldly. "One small medical ship against 12 Federation warships? This is madness." "Maybe," Kevin replied, "but it's the right kind of madness." Kevin fired the first shot, a weak energy beam that struck the shields of the nearest Federation destroyer. The beam did no damage, but it sent a clear message. The Asclepius would not surrender without a fight. The Federation fleet responded by targeting the medical ship's weapons. They fired carefully, trying to disable the Asclepius without destroying it completely. Admiral Cole still hoped to capture Kevin alive and study his research, but General Corax had different ideas. He ordered his ships to prepare antimatter torpedoes, weapons powerful enough to completely destroy the medical ship. "We cannot risk contamination. The ship and everything on it must be eliminated." Admiral Cole tried to countermand the order. "General, Dr. Shaw might really have found a cure. We should capture him and examine his work." "I am in command of this operation," General Corax replied sharply. "The ship will be destroyed in 15 minutes. Kevin felt the Asclepius shake as Federation energy beams struck its shields. The small ship could not survive much more damage. He fired back when he could, but his weapons were no match for the Federation fleet in the medical bay. Captain Vex stirred on her bed. The sounds of battle had awakened her, and she could feel the ship shaking from weapon impacts. Her body still hurt from the disease, but the genetic treatment was working. She felt stronger than she had in days. She managed to stand up and walk slowly to the control center where Kevin was fighting the hopeless battle. When she saw him manning the weapons alone, her heart filled with admiration and sorrow. "Kevin," she said, placing her hand on his shoulder, "you cannot win this fight." Kevin glanced at her, relief flooding his face when he saw her standing. "Captain, you're getting better. The treatment is working." "Yes, but you're going to die trying to protect me. Take an escape pod and save yourself." Kevin shook his head and fired another shot at the Federation fleet. "I told you before, Captain. I'm not leaving you." Captain Vex watched Kevin fight against impossible odds, one small medical ship against 12 warships. She had commanded soldiers for 20 years, but she had never seen courage like this. A human doctor was risking everything to save her life. Even though his own species had ordered her death, the ship shook again as more weapons fire struck the shields. Kevin could see on his instruments that the shields were failing. In a few more minutes, the Federation fleet would break through and destroy the Asclepius. "Captain," Kevin said, still working at the weapons controls, "I need you to do something for me. Go to the communication system and broadcast everything on all Federation frequencies. Tell them about the cure. Tell them how you're getting better. Maybe someone will listen." Captain Vex understood. Even if they died, Kevin wanted his research to survive. Someone else might be able to use his work to save lives in the future. She moved to the communication controls and began broadcasting on every channel the ship could reach. Her message went out to hundreds of worlds, millions of beings across the galaxy. For the first time, someone other than Kevin Shaw was telling the galaxy that a cure for the Crimson Flux existed. Captain Vex's voice echoed across the galaxy as her message reached millions of communication devices on hundreds of worlds. Her words were clear and strong, not the weak whisper of a dying being, but the confident tone of a healed captain. "Citizens of the galaxy, my name is Captain Zara Vex of the medical vessel Asclepius. 5 days ago, the Crimson Flux should have killed me like it killed my crew. The Dr. Kevin Shaw, a human medic, refused to abandon me. He found a cure using human genetic material, and I am alive because of his courage and skill. On the planet Centauri Prime, Dr. Alan Baker was eating dinner when Captain Vex's message interrupted every news channel. He nearly choked on his food when he heard her words. Dr. Baker had studied the crimson flux for years and believed it was impossible to cure. Yet here was living proof that a human doctor had done the impossible. Dr. Baker immediately called his research team together. Within minutes, they were analyzing the data that Kevin Shaw had transmitted along with Captain Vex's message. The numbers and test results showed clearly how human antibodies could fight the disease. "This is incredible," Dr. Baker told his team. "The human approach is completely different from anything we've tried. If this data is correct, we could save thousands of lives." Similar scenes were happening across the galaxy. On Earth, Dr. Linda Hayes watched the broadcast in her office at the Human Medical Academy. Tears ran down her face as she saw her former students' research displayed on the screen. Kevin had achieved something that the greatest medical minds in the galaxy thought was impossible. She immediately contacted the Federation Medical Council and demanded an emergency meeting. "You have to see this data," she told them. "Kevin Shaw has found the cure we've been looking for." But the Federation fleet was still preparing to destroy the Asclepius. General Corax refused to listen to the broadcast or examine Kevin's research. "This is desperate propaganda from a dying ship," he announced to his officers. "We will complete our mission." Admiral Cole was torn between his orders and what he was hearing. The data Kevin had sent looked real, and Captain Vex certainly seemed healthy for someone who should have died days ago. He tried once more to convince General Corax to delay the attack. "General, what if they're telling the truth? What if we're about to destroy the cure for the Crimson Flux?" General Corax's cold eyes showed no doubt. "Then we will find another cure. The risk of contamination is too great." On dozens of worlds, beings who had lost family members to the Crimson Flux watched Captain Vex's broadcast with growing hope. The disease had struck several planets in recent months, killing thousands. Families had been destroyed, cities had been quarantined, and entire populations had lived in fear. Now, for the first time, there was hope for survival. Public opinion began to shift rapidly. Communication networks across the galaxy carried messages from ordinary citizens demanding that the Federation spare Kevin Shaw's life. Medical professionals from every species called for the research to be protected and studied. Dr. Helen Brooks, captain of the merchant vessel Harmony, was loading cargo at a space station when she heard Captain Vex's broadcast. Helen had lost her sister to the Crimson Flux just 2 months earlier. When she heard that a cure existed, she made an immediate decision. "Change course," she told her crew. "We're going to help that medical ship." Her first officer looked at her with concern. "Captain, the Federation fleet will destroy any ship that approaches the quarantine zone." Helen's jaw was set with determination. "Then we better get there before they destroy the cure." The Harmony was joined by 5 other civilian vessels, all heading toward the Asclepius at maximum speed. News of their mission spread across the galaxy, inspiring others to act. Soon, a small fleet of civilian ships was racing to help Kevin Shaw and Captain Vex back on the Asclepius. Kevin felt the ship shake again as Federation weapons continued to pound the failing shields. He could see on his instruments that the shields would collapse in minutes. But then his communication system came alive with new voices. "Medical vessel Asclepius, this is Captain Helen Brooks of the merchant ship Harmony. We're coming to help you." "Dr. Shaw, this is the transport vessel Star Runner. We're 30 minutes out." "Asclepius, this is the passenger liner New Hope. Hold on, we're coming." Kevin could barely believe what he was hearing. Civilian ships were defying the Federation fleet to come to his aid. People he had never met were risking their lives to protect his research and save. Captain Vex, General Corax, was furious when he detected the approaching civilian vessels. "All ships are ordered to leave this area immediately or be fired upon," he broadcast on all frequencies. But the civilian captains refused to retreat. Captain Helen Brooks responded for all of them. "General Corax, That medical ship carries the cure for the Crimson Flux. We will not let you destroy it. Then you will be destroyed along with it. General Corax replied coldly. Admiral Cole realized that the situation was spinning out of control. If General Corax fired on civilian ships, it would cause a political crisis throughout the Federation. Member planets would never forgive the military for destroying innocent people who were trying to protect a medical breakthrough. General, Admiral Cole said carefully, firing on civilian vessels would violate Federation law. These are emergency conditions, General Corax replied. Any ship that enters the contamination zone is a threat to galactic security. The first civilian ship, the Harmony, arrived at the battle zone just as the Asclepius's shields finally collapsed. General Corax ordered his ships to fire on both vessels, but several of his own captains hesitated. They had families on worlds. That might be saved by Kevin Shaw's cure, Captain. Lisa Grant of the Federation Cruiser Defender refused to fire on the civilian ships. Sir, I cannot attack innocent people who are trying to save lives. Her refusal spread to other ships in the fleet. One by one, Federation officers began to question their orders. The galaxy was watching their every move, and history would judge them for what they did next. Admiral Marcus Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his own officers refused to obey General Corax's orders. The Centaurian general's face was red with anger as ship after ship in the Federation fleet declared they would not fire on civilian vessels trying to protect a medical breakthrough. This is mutiny, General Corax shouted at Admiral Cole. Order your officers to fire on those ships immediately. Admiral Cole looked at the tactical display showing the Asclepius surrounded by 6 civilian vessels. The merchant ships had positioned themselves between the medical ship and the Federation fleet, creating a protective barrier with their own bodies. These brave civilians were willing to die to protect Kevin Shaw's cure. General, I cannot order my people to fire on innocent civilians. Admiral Cole said quietly, they're not soldiers or criminals. They're ordinary people trying to save lives. General Corax drew his sidearm and pointed it at Admiral Cole. Then I will give the orders myself. Stand down immediately. But Admiral Cole's officers surrounded General Corax, their own weapons drawn. Lieutenant Nancy Blake spoke for all of them. Sir, we cannot allow you to destroy the cure for the Crimson Flux. Too many people have died from this disease. The mutiny spread throughout the Federation fleet as crews on ship after ship refused to follow orders that would destroy Kevin Shaw's research. They had seen the data, heard Captain Vex's testimony, and witnessed the hope spreading across the galaxy. They would not be remembered as the people who killed the cure on the Asclepius. Kevin watched in amazement as the civilian ships formed a protective circle around his vessel. Captain Helen Brooks contacted him directly, her voice calm and determined. Dr. Shaw, we're here to escort you to safety. Can you and Captain Vex transfer to one of our ships? Kevin looked at Captain Vex, who was growing stronger by the hour. The genetic treatment had worked better than he had dared to hope. Her crystalline skin was returning to its natural blue color, and she could stand and walk without assistance. Yes, Kevin replied. We're ready to transfer, along with all my research data and samples of the cure. The transfer took place quickly while the Federation fleet argued among itself. Kevin and Captain Vex moved to the Harmony along with containers full of research materials and genetic samples. As soon as they were safely aboard, the civilian fleet began moving away from the battle zone. General Corax, now under guard on Admiral Cole's ship, screamed orders that no one would follow. The Asclepius, now empty of people but still containing dangerous biological material, was finally destroyed by a single antimatter torpedo. The ship vanished in a brief flash of light, taking the Crimson Flux samples with it in the weeks that followed. Kevin's cure was studied and refined by medical teams across the galaxy. The treatment required careful preparation and skilled doctors to perform the genetic modifications, but it worked on every species that tried it. The Crimson Flux, which had terrified the galaxy for months, was finally defeated. Kevin found himself famous throughout known space, but he did not enjoy the attention. He preferred working quietly in his laboratory, helping other doctors learn how to perform the genetic treatment that saved lives. He was promoted to head of the new Multi-Species Disease Research Division, a position that let him focus on medical work instead of politics. Captain Vex recovered completely from her illness and returned to active duty, but she requested a transfer to work with Kevin's research division as military liaison. The bond formed during those desperate days on the Asclepius had grown into a deep friendship that crossed the boundaries between their species. The Federation held a hearing to determine what should happen to Admiral Cole and the officers who had mutinied against General Corax. Captain Vex testified on their behalf, explaining how their compassion had saved not just her life but potentially millions of lives across the galaxy. These officers faced an impossible choice, she told the Federation Council. They could follow orders and destroy hope, or they could follow their conscience and protect life. They chose compassion over blind obedience, and the galaxy is better for their courage. Admiral Cole received an official reprimand for disobeying orders, but he also received a medal for protecting civilian lives. General Corax was quietly transferred to a desk job on a remote planet, where he could cause no more harm. Kevin's story spread throughout human space and became part of their cultural identity. Children learned about the doctor who stood alone against a fleet to save his alien patient. The tale was told in schools and remembered in songs, becoming a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, the refusal to abandon those in need. Dr. Linda Hayes visited Kevin at his new research facility 6 months after the incident. She found him working late in his laboratory, still driven by the same dedication that had saved Captain Vex. "Kevin," she said, "you've become a hero to billions of people. How does that feel?" Kevin looked up from his microscope and smiled. "I'm not a hero, Dr. Hayes. I'm just a doctor who did his job. When someone is sick and scared, you help them. It doesn't matter what species they are or how dangerous it might be. That's what doctors do." Captain Vex entered the laboratory carrying 2 cups of tea. She had learned to make it the way Kevin liked it, a small gesture of friendship that meant more to him than all the medals and fame. "The new research facility is almost ready," she reported. "We'll be able to help even more patients once it's operational." Kevin accepted the tea gratefully and returned to his work. Outside the laboratory windows, stars shone in the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, other diseases waited to be cured and other patients needed help. Kevin Shaw would be ready for them, because he had learned an important truth during those desperate days on the Asclepius. Sometimes one person's compassion could change the fate of the galaxy, and sometimes the best way to save everyone was to refuse to abandon anyone. The human doctor who had stood alone against a fleet had proven that the greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in the simple decision to care for those who needed help, no matter the cost.